All right.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome, guys. Thanks for jumping on live, and also thanks for watching back on replay. Let us know who catches this with the replay. And Maria, I'm really excited to bring Maria on to chat to us. So mental health is something that is very close to my heart. But, you know, obviously it's not my area of expertise. I can't jump on here and talk about anything but my own personal experience. So I'm really excited to have Maria here to share with us a little bit of what she does with the mums that she works with, and a little bit of her own experiences as well. So I'll just hand it over to Maria to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you work with, those sorts of things.
All right. Well, thank you, Talia. I'm really excited to be talking with you guys today. So my name is Maria Yakimchuk, and I am a transformational EFT coach who specializes in helping moms recover and heal from postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety without medication. So I do that primarily through using EFT tapping, self-compassion work, and then I bring in my background in psychology and all the research that I've been doing on maternal mental health for almost a decade now to create this comprehensive plan where we're using the latest research and understanding that we have of maternal mental health, and then we're bringing in some alternative healing techniques to heal holistically. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I do. And I'm located in the US, so not on the same coast as probably a lot of you ladies out there, and not on the same, not even the same hemisphere as Talia.
Oh no, look at our outfits.
I know, right? I mean, it's snowing here, so and there's Talia enjoying the summer.
Yeah, well, I know how good is Zoom, that we can sort of connect across the borders, and that you can help people across the borders too. Tell us, how did you get into working with mums, and how did all that start?
Yeah, so as I said, I have a background in mental health. So I have a master's degree in psychology, and my concentration was in marriage and family therapy. So what I was doing before I became a mom, I was working a lot with families, but more from the kids side. A lot of my, that's just what I gravitated to at the time. So I worked with families, but a lot of it was kid-centered. Now, when I became a mom myself and started, going through my own mental health issues, I sort of switched my focus as to focusing more on moms and less on kids, because even though kids are incredibly important, and that's where a lot of the times when you have somebody come into family therapy, that's where you go first. It's like, oh, the kid's the problem. Usually that's never the case. And so I started digging more with, my own mental health and everything. And that just made me realize that it's not that someone's the problem, but a lot of the times when the parents aren't doing well, and especially the mom, the whole kind of family system falls apart. And that's why I started switching my focus from working with kids and learning more about kids and toddlers and all of that and parenting, and more to moms, because I realized that if the mom isn't regulated, if the mom is struggling with postpartum mental health or mental health in general, she isn't able to parent the way that she would imagine herself she'd be able to parent, because we all want to parent, be the best parents that we can possibly be. And when we have mental health struggles standing in the way, it's really hard and it's disheartening. And so I wanted to help moms to not be in those positions, because I was in that position and it was quite painful.
I think it's a really hard thing, and I know we all find it difficult to put ourselves first. Like, I have these conversations with women every day about their health and fitness, and so often this gets pushed down for us, and to be honest, it even has for me at times, and this is what I do for a living, so I get how difficult it is for people, but it's such an important thing to think about how we're showing up for our family. And, when we are putting other people first, we want to put everyone first. That's what mums do, right? Like, that's what we do. We carry our families, but it's finding that balance of not letting ourselves run dry and, you know, lifting up everyone around us, that I think is the tricky balance. And I think that a lot of people struggle with it. I've definitely struggled with it. I'm still finding my own balance, but I think it's something that, you know, maybe we need to talk about more and just, you know, understand that there are a lot of people trying to do exactly the same thing here.
Yeah, and I think it's true for every mom. I don't think you'll ever find a mom who comes in regardless of her background and what she does, who says, oh, you know, I became a mom and it all went just like that. I fit into this role. I found the balance. Everything's perfect. None of us are like that because we don't really have an idea of how we're going to be as a mom. For real, we all have an idea what we'd like to be, what we think we'd be. But then when we actually become moms, we realize, well, I don't look like that person who I imagined in my head. I can't be that person. And that's where there's a lot starts happening, where we start having this big identity shift for ourselves. And then a lot of this societal messaging and messaging from kind of your family of origin comes in. And we try to navigate what sort of feels good to us, what we think motherhood should look like, what society is telling us our motherhood should look and feel like, what our family tells us our motherhood should look like. And oftentimes there's parts that are fighting against each other. And that's why you're starting to have a lot of issues of like, I can't find balance, or my cup is running dry, but I still have to keep pouring out of it. Because the truth is, I think no matter where you are in the world, the message most moms have received, and even in our generation and definitely in generations past, is that the moment you become a mother, you essentially sacrifice everything, put your kids first. And that's what good moms do. They put their kids first. Except that when you become a mom, you sort of realize, if that's how I'm going to live my life, that does not feel good to me. And that's where the internal struggle comes. And when we do start doing that, when we do put our kids, our partners, our other family members ahead of ourselves, we realize that we can only do it for so long, and then we're completely burnt out and we're not functioning well. And so there's a lot we have to fight against to find that balance.
I think it's sort of like, you remind me what I just touched on talking to you just before this. So I come from a family where my mum did everything, and I mean everything. My dad worked away a lot, so, you know, she had the 3 kids and was just like running a tight ship, right? But you know, I didn't see her take the time for herself ever. Maybe she did, but to be honest, I didn't see that. And her mum before that, so my nan, like, she was the same. She did everything. She came over as an immigrant after the Second World War, you know, came to Australia with no papers, no money. No, it was very much a work mentality, all work, no rest sort of a thing. And I find now that a lot of these things I carry, and this is interesting because one of my own coaches said this to me recently. She's like, Talia, she didn't say these exact words, but this is exactly what she meant. She's like, why are you still behaving like an immigrant in the 50s? Like, this isn't your life now. Like, you have access to a babysitter down the road. You have access to a job. Like, you've got a house over your head. You've got your family here. You've got your partner's family here. You do have a support network around you. Why aren't you using it? Why aren't you getting a cleaner to clean your house or do all of these things? And in my head, I'm kind of like, but that's not what my mum did. That's not what I've been taught. And I like, it's really stuck with me. I really do feel that a lot of this stuff, like I make things harder than what they need to be. And a lot of the women that I've talked to, I feel the same. Like, we make it harder than our life necessarily needs to be sometimes. What what are your thoughts on this, Maria?
Yeah, so my thoughts are exactly this. It's the generational, you could call trauma. I wouldn't necessarily call this specific as trauma, but it's like our generational baggage that we carry with us. If we don't sort of break the pattern, we keep carrying this baggage from, mom to daughter, or, if we have sons, we imprint something similar on them that they will find a wife that's going to behave like their mom, right? So we're like carrying this generational baggage from generation to generation until you find a person in that link who's going to be like, whoa, this isn't working for me. I don't like it. Let me rework it. And being the first person like in your family to do that is also very hard because you have no roadmap. You have no idea what you're doing. You might know, I don't want to do it like my parents did, but what do I want to do? Just because I don't want to do it this way. I don't know how I'm going to show up. I don't know how to do it. So it is very hard because we're making it up as we go along and trying to be like, well, what feels right? And when I take this that feels right, how does this come up against what I've been raised as? And how does that come up against my family values? Because my family values are important to me, but then I have these personal values and I have these other values that I've maybe picked up along the way, and how do I put them together? And that's why, it becomes really hard because moms do still have a lot of messages, even from our family members and society, that we are supposed to do it all. That as a mom, that the moment you become a wife, you take on a bunch of responsibilities, and the moment you become a mom, you pretty much take on all the responsibilities. And to me, like, I think that was part of why I struggled with my mental health after I became a mom, because that's what I felt like. I had to do it all and take it all on, and with the baby and with the fact that I'm not doing okay physically or mentally. And it took a while to climb out of there, and it took a while to sort of decompress from that level of thinking and to start looking at like what's actually working for me. How do I want this to look like? And realizing that I actually have agency in making my motherhood look the way that I want to make it look. And I think not everybody realizes that, because we are so plugged into essentially our tribe and our family that we are not aware of the fact that we actually have agency and we can make this look different than our parents had it look.
And like, I've got 2 girls now, and I don't want to repeat the same thing for them. I don't want them, like, what you were talking about before. We want the best for our kids. We want better for our kids than what we have. I don't want them to have the same struggles of feeling like they can't give to themselves. They can't, put aside time for themselves, that they have to, make sure that everyone else is happy before they're happy. Like, I don't want that for my girls, but it's that tricky thing of finding out now what my messaging is, because I know I'm carrying a lot of baggage from, previous generations. Like, how do I change that? I think it's a really tricky thing. And I think until I had kids, to be honest, I didn't think about that at all. Now I think I am thinking about that messaging, and if I'm not putting myself first, then what I'm saying to my girls is that when you become a mother, you don't deserve to put yourself first either. You don't deserve to have the time for yourself or to feel good or do all of those things. And I'm super conscious now of how I'm starting to show up. And I think, I don't know, for me, that's been an important mental shift.
Yeah, it is. I think it is. It is very important that when we start looking at how do we show up and what do we model for our kids, we can then start realizing that it's not all about, like, we can't teach them by telling them stuff. We have to teach them by showing them, right? And then the only way we create shifts is if we're the first one in the family, then we're starting our shift changes with us, and it's going to be hard. It's not going to be perfect, and we're only going to move so far, but then maybe our children will take it on and they'll make more shifts. I'm a boy mom, so it's a little bit different. I have boys. But I want to teach them that, that a woman isn't there in their house to serve them. That is not a purpose of having a woman in the house. Like, so we try to make sure that they do chores. We don't have anything like, oh, they're boy chores or girl chores. No, all chores are chores. Like, everybody lives in the house, everybody makes it messy. You know, cooking is important for everybody. Boys eat just like girls do. So it's like, why should the girls only know how to cook? You need to know how to cook. So we're trying to, break the generational patterns here as well. But it is hard because, you mentioned being immigrants. Like, my husband and I are both first generation immigrants from Ukraine. So we're, still, we were born under the Soviet Union, and there's a lot of baggage coming from there about what a traditional family looks like, what traditional values look like. And a lot of us witnessed our mothers being the ones carrying all the weight. They were the ones working, they were the ones cooking, they were the ones cleaning, they're the ones organizing, doing everything. And the dad was, I'm not quite sure what his role was in the family for the most part. For most of us, it was kind of like he was there. So, now there's the two of us coming together and trying to create a family where it's like, that's not the case, because we also, A, that's not a pleasant partnership to be in, and B, we don't want our boys to think that, as a man, you marry and then, okay, and now you're just there like a placeholder, right? So like, we don't want to carry that over. And so it's a lot of work. It's a lot of soul searching. It's a lot of stopping and thinking, like, what values did I carry over from my family of origin? And do I agree with them? Do they align with me? And it takes a while. Like, I don't feel like you'll ever have an answer. And it's an ever evolving list, that you might have a list that looks a particular way when your kids are just born versus a different list when they were, toddlers and then school age, right? So it's an evolving thing.
Tasha's asking, was the role of your dad a breadwinner of the family?
Not mine, to be honest. For my husband, also not really. Both his parents worked and both my parents worked. So that's why it was kind of interesting that, no, it wasn't that the dad was the breadwinner.
Yeah, so yeah, Natasha's just saying, yeah, whereas now both parents are breadwinners, so change of dynamics, which, yeah, exactly. But in your case, that's not the case.
Yeah, in our case, it's not the case. It's not even the case with my husband either, but that's why I find it's really interesting, because there's a lot of traditional families where you have that, the dad's the breadwinner, mom's a stay-at-home mom, right? And that's what we see. I saw that with my grandparents, but with my parents and with my husband's parents, it was both parents were the breadwinners, and yet the moms were the ones who were carrying the load at home, and the dads were maybe helpful, maybe not, depending on the day. So kind of more like what you see now a lot of the times, where people are trying to change the roles but are still struggling with it.
I know that there's been studies done. I don't have the details here, but on, now that we do have both parents in the workforce, both parents are breadwinners, the mental load on women tends to be much higher, and the amount of housework that women do still tends to be a lot higher. Do you have more sort of concrete data that you can give on this, or what's your experience with the women you work with?
Yeah, I don't remember the concrete data. I think it was still something along the lines of that. When you ask men and women who does what, the men will typically tell you that it's 50-50, whereas when you ask the women, they're much closer to what it is, which is about 70-30, which is the women do the 70, men do the 30. And it's kind of been like that for a long time. I think ever since kind of like the women entered the workforce, but definitely from the 70s. I can't remember what the hour per week thing is for how much more women do than men, so I don't have those numbers in front of me. In terms of the women that I see a lot of different women. I do have a lot of entrepreneurial women, so work at home moms mostly, so it's a little different. But what I am still seeing with people I work with friends, that the moms are still doing more regardless of their employment status.
So what do you think the mental health impacts of that are? Like, mental burnout,
Mhm.
stress? What do you see?
Yeah, burnout. I think burnout and exhaustion. Like we'd like to say that like, depression and anxiety and those do come, but a lot of the times they do come from the burnout because if you're not sleeping enough, if all you're doing is constantly ruminating and thinking about what is on the to-do list, do my kids have this, do my kids have that, what birthday party am I planning, what sports do I need to take them to, what about camps, what about this, what about that, right? Like your mind is just never resting. And so yeah, as a mom, as a woman, you burn out. And then on top of that, you have the societal messaging that, as a mom, you are required to do this. And not only are you required to do this, you're required to love it. And if you don't love it, there's something pathologically wrong with you. Moreover, you don't love your children. If you don't love the work of motherhood, you don't love your children. And those messages are so packed with this negativity. And they're also not true because we all know that your love for your children does not determine whether you have depression or anxiety. Like it has nothing to do with that. We also know that it's very different. You can love your children and you can absolutely hate motherhood because your motherhood experience is not one that's fulfilling to you for whatever reason, right? Like maybe you dream to be a stay-at-home mom, but you're working full time and that's not working for you. Or maybe it's the opposite. You were dreaming that you'd have a 50-50 relationship with your partner. You'd both be working, but you ended up having to stay at home when you don't like it, right? So it's like when we don't have a reality match what we wanted, it is hard. It will lead to things like depression and anxiety. And especially if we're staying at home and isolating, then we also believe we're the only one, which adds more on top of the depression and anxiety. And then the shame and the guilt spiral. We have all of that, and it leads to nothing good when it comes to your mental health.
So let's talk about support at home. What can we do to help this? So my partner is supportive, right? I think he's very supportive person, but I feel like I have to ask for that support all the time. I have to say, can you please empty the dishwasher? Can you please hang this washing out? Can you please take the kids to the park so I can do this Zoom chat for an hour? And sometimes I feel like for me, I don't know, it's asking. I feel like it's not. I'd be interested to hear what you guys in the chat, if this is your experience or not. Maybe I'm the only one. But what can we do to sort of change that dynamic in our home relationship to feel that we are getting the support that we need? Is it a matter of us speaking up more and just asking for it more because that's how men work?
The answer to that is no. So I will tell you, you're not the only one. I think that is the experience of the majority of women. There's some, they're lucky that their husband isn't like that, but the majority of us are all stuck in that situation. Now, there is an amazing resource for this that helps incredibly. It's called Fair Play. If you haven't heard it, it's a book, it's a game, there's a documentary. Eve Rodsky is the one, it's called Fair Play. Eve Rodsky is the one who came up with it. She is a professional mediator who basically got really tired of having that dynamic in her home. That even though both her husband and her were working, she was the one doing way more. She was the one doing everything for the kids. She was the one carrying all the mental load. She was the one picking up little things here and there. And she got tired of it. And so she went and tried to explore. Was she the only one? She had the same question as you, Talia. Am I the only one? Is this my marriage? Turned out it wasn't. It was pretty much everyone. And so she came up with this system. And the system is beautiful. It's relatively simple to implement. And so what it is, she created this deck of cards that covers the majority of tasks that you might have. So she splits it into there's household tasks, there's tasks like tending to the kids, like it's split out in this beautiful system, very detailed. And so the idea is that you and your husband look at those tasks, split up the deck, see who's doing what, and then you renegotiate to split that load that feels more even. to, or more equitable to you guys, because even isn't necessarily even what we're looking for. We're looking for it being equitable, so it feels fair. What makes our system so different is that not only does it eliminate you having to ask, because every week you're supposed to play with these cards, renegotiate which tasks, and redistribute the tasks if you want to, or keep them the same way, whatever kind of works for you. But what she has, which I think is another thing that we always struggle with our husbands, is the standard of care, right? They'll do it and we'll be like, well, I'm sorry, like this is not good enough, right? So she has this wonderful thing where it's called, I think it's called CPS, which is, it's like a minimum standard of care is what she called it. And you pre-negotiate, what does it look like for this task to be done? So if, let's say, you agreed on the fact that your husband's taking out the garbage, right? Your minimum standard of care could be like, as soon as the garbage reaches the brim, right? You take the trash out. We don't let it build up, right? Or, you do it after 2 days, you go throw it out, or something stinks, you go take it out. Their other part is, which is where we get caught up on, is there is a part that helps you with the mental load. And it is about the fact that whoever is doing the task is required to do all parts of it, which means planning it and executing it, which is the part that most of our husbands don't do, and why we feel like we're asking them. They don't plan. They don't know what actually goes. I love the comment. He's not stupid. He's a guy. And that's the thing. That's why I think that book, if you don't have time to read the book, like there's a document, she just recently put out a documentary on Hulu, and it's fantastic, at least to get you started. Like, they're not stupid, but this is where I'm talking about societal messaging. Most of our men were still not taught that a household is their responsibility. Right? So they don't look at it. They don't look at how you plan the task and how do you execute the task. So they might help us with the execution. So it doesn't feel like they helped, because we still had to do the planning. We still had to do the prep, right? So like when she talks about, for example, cooking, right? So we talk about cooking. Your husband might think he helped if you prepped everything and he cooked it. Well, he helped. In reality, all that happened is he executed the task. You did all the planning. And if you use the fair play system, you could give the cards all to him, where he has to be the one who's going to do the grocery shopping. He's going to be the one to plan out the meal and then execute the meal. And then you can decide whether cleaning up after he cooks is his responsibility or yours. But you have these concrete cards with concrete details and concrete standards of care, which I think is very important for most of our men, because I think the conversation is always like, well, yeah, I don't know what needs to be done, or I don't see it. I didn't notice this is a problem, right? I feel like most of us here have heard a variation of this, and her system really eliminates that. You have to stick to it, but it is, I think it's a fantastic system for the household.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. I think it's a really interesting thing. And I think, it's like you say, it's that disconnect between our standards, what we expect, what we've sort of been taught how things work, and their standards of not understanding how things work, maybe, and just being okay with, a standard that's not ours. Yeah, it's a tricky thing, but yeah, I'm definitely going to check out this book.
Yeah, no, I highly recommend it, because it takes all of that guesswork out of it, because you guys sit down and you have this planning session where you discuss all of these things before the task is done. And then, then you send them off to do the task. And ideally at the end of the week, you then talk about, well, how did the week go? Did it go according to plan? And then you can renegotiate from there and give feedback, like make it constructive feedback, so that, they'll learn. And it is kind of sad that we, as their partners, have to teach them something their moms should have taught them. But we also know that the previous generation, the moms did take on all the responsibility and the boys were sort of relieved of it. So, when they grow up to be men, there's a woman in the house, she's going to take care of it, right?
Mm. So I guess it's like, there's no escaping that the job is on our shoulders to change that messaging for our kids if we want it to change. Like, we need to be the start of the change, even though this feels like another job now. Yeah, I think it's really important to just, I suppose the first step, would you agree, is just reflecting on what we're currently doing, the things that, where the messages we're passing on, and then the standards that we're expecting and setting around our house. Just sort of observing what is there, and then maybe, where things need to change.
Yeah, I think so. I think any change, you want to start with sort of taking stock of how is it right now, which parts are working, which parts are not working, and then concentrate on the ones that are not working. How would I like to see them change? What would be my ideal outcome? And then sort of build in a system of like, well, how can we get to this ideal outcome? Who is involved? What needs to happen? Is this even possible, right? Because sometimes things aren't possible because life gets in the way. We all have different jobs with different flexibility. And that's why I was saying that the idea I like about fair play is it's never about equality, because it's not always possible to split the tasks equally, but it's about equity. So it feels fair. It's about it being fair. And the sad part is, yeah, we have to do the work because, the system is set up to not benefit us as women, as mothers. And so if we want to see it changed, unfortunately, yes, we have to put in the work, because I think the system has shown us it's not interested in accommodating us. So we got to do the heavy lifting, and it comes with a lot of mental health issues because it is hard and we burn out. And that's why it's nice to be able to get together with other moms and talk, and to realize that you are not alone in your experience. Most of us are experiencing this, but also to realize that we don't have to keep experiencing this. We can start changes. We can start small in our own household, and then the change can spread, and it is going to get better. I am sure of it, especially because, all of us here on this call, I know we're doing better for our kids than perhaps was done for us.
That's the thing. And, like, I talk about the exact same thing with the ladies that I work with, just making a start on, their health, making a start on their fitness. It doesn't have to be perfect right away. You don't need to be going to the gym. You don't even need to be doing a workout every day, but just choosing that, right, enough is enough. Like, I deserve to feel better. I deserve to have more energy. I deserve to, love how I look, love how I feel stronger. I'm going to allow myself 10 minutes today to do that. I'm going to, put good food into my family so I have more energy, and so they can grow up seeing that health is, normal part of our everyday life. It's just starting small. And, I know it feels like a big overwhelming thing when we talk about it like this, but really it's just making that tiny commitment to, like, what is one thing that I can do for myself today to move my own health forward, physical and mental, and to move my family's health forward. And they're probably going to be the same thing. Like you said at the start, like, our health, our mental health, our physical health as well, is our families, essentially. Like, if you start, eating better, your family starts eating better. You help them with that. Like, you help them avoid those struggles that you are having right now. Same thing with our mental health, I'm sure. Like, I stopped sending these messages to my girls. I help them from having these same struggles when they're a mum down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. Mental health is no different than physical health. You have to start small if you haven't really considered it, and you just sort of put one foot in front of the other. And I think the one thing, although I feel like with physical health, especially with diet change, but with mental health, like, when you come out of sort of a system where you've always put everybody ahead of you, you've never said no, you've always sort of let their needs and their wants run your life. When you are going to start focusing on you and you're going to start putting up boundaries, you're going to get a lot of resistance from everybody, from your spouse, from your children, they're not going to like it because they're used to having access to all of you all the time and you not saying no. And then when you say no, there's going to be resistance. I'm saying that to sort of warn you that that will happen and to not let that discourage you, because I think a lot of the times, especially with sort of modern parenting, we started to believe that we need to be accessible to our children 24/7 for their every want and need. And if we're not, we're going to mess them up psychologically. And we're not. Like, we are not meant to answer every single one of their wants and needs. Sometimes they are meant to just sort of figure it out for themselves and struggle. That does build character. You know, I'm not saying create special struggles, but if they're struggling naturally, let them. It's good for them. And when we start thinking of it this way, we do start creating space for ourselves, and we do start putting up boundaries that protect us and protect our health. And eventually our family will get on board and then realize how good and how healthy it is that everyone in the family is allowed boundaries and allowed space. Like, that is what I teach my moms in my one-on-one coaching program. Like, boundaries is a big part of it because it's important. Without boundaries, we're not going to be able to do the self-care because we're going to feel guilty. We're going to feel like we have to give our all to the kids. But just as sort of like a personal example from my life, so my kids are one of them is almost 7, the other one is 4. And they are not the most independent kids. Like, they're very social. So I think that's probably why they're very extroverted. So they love spending time with us, especially my eldest has always loved spending time with me. But because for me, my mental health and my space has been important, I have taught both of them the importance of quiet time, of alone time. And we're all practicing it so that it is healthy for everybody. They know that if, mom went into the room, closed the door, and like the lights are off, she's resting. Unless it's an emergency, we don't bother me. Also, we have implemented sort of alone time for each one of them after school so they can decompress. And once we've done that, there are less fights between them. So like, were they resistant in the beginning to it? Yes, our therapist suggested that we get walkie-talkies so that they know that, we're accessible, like, because there is a fear that, like, with kids, there is a natural fear that if we're not seeing or touching our parents, they have disappeared, right? Like, it's a normal safety thing. You all of a sudden incorporate walkie-talkies, they're no longer scared. We didn't even use the walkie-talkies. For them, just knowing that they had one and we had one, everybody went into their rooms and it was fine. And while they were resistant at first, they love it now. My eldest now comes in from school, and the first thing I hear is, I need my alone time to decompress. I will talk to you when I'm done. And it's beautiful, right? Self-care right there.
Yeah, it's great. It's really important. Any other tips that you can give to the mums watching on maybe like one easy thing that we can implement in our home lives today? Like, what's one quick, I don't want to say quick win, but what's one thing that we can start to think about doing today?
Well, so as we talked about, I want you to take stock of your life to figure out what's working, what's not working. Another thing that I did, was it last year, 2 years ago, I bought this book on Amazon. It's called Breathe, Mama, Breathe. And it's all about 5-minute mindfulness meditations. And they're not even meditations. A lot of it is you kind of enjoying your everyday, but mindfully. And it has made such a big difference because it doesn't feel as overwhelming. Like we were talking about, like when you feel like, oh, I have to take care of my mental health, it's so big, right? Like nobody wants to meditate for 45 minutes. Oftentimes we don't have that 45 minutes, but you do have 5 minutes. You can mindfully enjoy a cup of coffee. You can mindfully cook. You can mindfully do a lot of things. And when you start incorporating these into your everyday life, you notice how your mood starts shifting for the better. You start feeling better. You are appreciating the good moments. And you're also realizing with mindfulness, one thing I love about mindfulness and why, I work with my moms on the mindfulness piece as well, is the fact that you learn that while the good doesn't last, neither does the bad. All our emotions, they're like waves. They peak and they, peter out and they go away. And so that is one of the things that I would highly recommend, is doing these small mindfulness meditations that will help you appreciate every moment of quiet, every moment of joy you have. And they will also allow you to tolerate the moments that are not pleasant, because you're going to know that even the unpleasant moments, they end.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Like, you don't need much as well. Like a 5-minute meditation, a 10-minute meditation, we can literally all fit this into our day. Okay. Like, everyone here can find 10 minutes in their day. I always like to think about this when I'm like, oh, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. There are women that have a lot more kids than me. They've got like 5 businesses, or they're working 2 jobs, or they're a single mum. They've got a lot more on than what I do, and they can manage to find 10 minutes. So we all can find that. And I think it's just, that's remembering, really. This is something that I talk about with doing online workouts. How do we schedule them in when you haven't been in the habit of doing them, and you've got like a million things that are in your head before this workout pops up? It's like way down here. How do you do it? You schedule it in, set yourself an alarm for your 10-minute meditation or something like that. Put it in your diary, sandwich it to something that you do, like before you have a shower or after you have a shower, in the shower.
Yeah.
Find that time. And I think consistency, I think with this would be exactly the same as consistency with doing things for your health, for your physical health. It's just that little bit every day, a couple of minutes every day, really does help, and it does add up, and it's so much more beneficial than doing one 45-minute workout a week or one 45-minute meditation a week. It's just, checking in with yourself daily, I think is a really valuable thing that we probably don't do enough of.
Oh, I agree. I think the one thing, the way how you do it, actually heard someone speak about this recently. I really agree that when we say that we don't have the time for something, that means we're not prioritizing it. We have the time. We definitely have 10 minutes. Like, you probably spent at least that much scrolling today on TikTok or on Instagram, and maybe you learned something, maybe you didn't, but you have those 10 minutes. It's about priority. So when we prioritize our health, our mental health, our physical health, we then pencil it in as something that's important. And then that's something that we do. So yeah, it's not about the time. We have the time. It's about priority. So that's another thing I teach my moms is, what can we take off the list that isn't necessarily serving you, to make the time for things that do serve you? And that also, again, comes with boundaries, comes with learning to say no. When we learn to say no to things we don't want, we open up the space to say to the things that we want. We open up the space to say yes. And that is what we should really focus on, that we want to say yes more often, which is what we tell our parents to say to their toddlers, don't say no as often, say yes. So we want to say yes more often, which means we got to open up more space for things that we want to say yes, and knock off the things that we want to say no to, and don't let them kind of take up our time, especially if they're not absolutely necessary for anyone's survival.
We all need to do a bit of a due diligence on our health.
Yeah, we do. I mean, health is important, right? Like, I feel like as we age, right, like, we realize in our 20s, we got away with eating like crap, not sleeping, not exercising. We still felt fine. We were okay. And then we realize we get into our 30s, things aren't as good. And then, there's 40s and 50s and 60s. And yeah, health needs to become a priority, because if we don't preserve it, if we don't take care of it, it's only going to go downhill from there. And if you don't have your health, everything else really stops mattering.
Yeah, that's it. It's not going to get any easier from now.
No, it's not. Every year is harder.
Yeah, that's it. I just want to touch on a little bit as well, like postpartum depression and anxiety, because I know there are quite a few new mums in this group. I feel that it's probably affecting more people than we see with statistics or anything like that. I struggled with it a bit after my first daughter, but I didn't go through like formal diagnosis or help or anything like that. and I've spoken to a lot of women who are sort of the same. And I think for me anyway, like part of the reason why I didn't seek help was I didn't really realize it was happening until I was at the other side, because, you know, I'm there with my baby. They're not pulling me up on things. Like my partner was working 14 hours a day. I didn't have anyone around me because it was in the middle of COVID lockdowns. Like literally I had no one. And so, you know, I didn't realize what was going on with myself. And I think that, you know, for a lot of women who, you know, maybe they do have the support around them, but they're good at hiding things. They're good at putting on that happy face for the family because that's what we do. Are people struggling in silence with this, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who suffer in silence with it. I was kind of like you. I was never officially diagnosed, and what was even worse, having a psychology degree, I for some reason believed that somehow safeguarded me from having it, and I actively pushed against the idea that something's wrong, even though something was clearly and visibly wrong. But I was also one of those people, like you were saying, that when I came to the doctor, this was me. I'm doing so well. Everything's great. And when you look at my pictures with my kids, I'm happy. I'm smiling. Like, no one knows what's actually happening inside. No one knows that no matter how much I sleep, I can't get enough sleep, that I have no energy. I have no desire. I feel dead and empty inside. I'm raging at my husband when he's at home about everything. I'm angry about the world, right? But the outside world didn't see that. So yeah, I think there's lots of women who are struggling outside of our statistics, and even our statistics are staggering, at least right now in the US post-COVID. We're estimating that there's roughly 20% of women who have given birth are struggling with either postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, or maybe even both at the same time. 20%. And those are the ones that we have statistics for. And you're right, we don't know how many more we don't, because women are still afraid to speak up. Our OBs don't check on us enough to ask what's happening. Like if you go to your regular doctor, they might not ask those questions. And even, let's say your pediatrician might ask. I've even marked off answers that, like, yeah, I'm not doing well. Nobody checked those. Nobody reached out to me. Nobody asked me. So a lot of the times we feel scared because we don't know what the answer is going to be like. We all have this fear of, like, what if I'm going to be considered an unfit mother and my baby's going to get taken away? Like, that is a real fear, because that does sometimes happen. And it's like freak things that happen, but we're all really scared of it. Our babies are very important to us. We don't want them to be taken away. Then there's stigma against mental health as well. As I was saying in the beginning, there's this big stigma of saying, like, if you have postpartum depression, you must not love your baby. And no mother comes in saying, I don't love my baby. We all love our babies, even if we struggle. So there's a lot of still stigma, and there's reasons why we hide. And then there's many women who do like to put on the brave face because maybe they came from a family where you don't talk about your issues, especially mental health issues. And so we hide. We don't want to talk about it, even though we're struggling and our family is struggling. And the reason why we have postpartum depression is completely out of our control, because a good bit of it is purely physical, that of how our body responded to this hormone drop that we had, and how much inflammation we had during pregnancy, even though inflammation is a natural part of pregnancy. But the level of inflammation can actually correlate to whether you're going to have postpartum depression or not, because we have new research that suggests that inflammation in the body is correlated with depression. We don't know which one comes first, but there is a correlation with inflammation in the body. And we do have inflammation when we're pregnant as a natural, normal process. But some women are just more sensitive to it than others. So we can prepare for it, right? When we know what to look for, we can't ever completely safeguard against this. And, you're right, like with COVID, even if you wanted support and you wanted help, you couldn't, because you had to keep everybody safe. Everything was shut down and you had to put that ahead of your mental health. So yeah, we do have a lot of moms now who are having like 3-year-old toddlers that they're like, oh, well, this is what I was in and I got no help. And what do I do now? Because the other thing is, I hear this question is a lot is, When will my postpartum depression go away? It doesn't usually go away if you don't take care of it, just like any other depression. It's gonna linger. It's gonna, get worse or better depending on what's happening with you, but it's not gonna go away if you don't address it.
Yeah, I think probably just an important conversation to have with more mums. Like I still feel like this is a bit of a taboo topic sometimes, not talked about enough. Like I think it's improving and how many people are talking about and sharing about and seeking help. But yeah, just checking in with our mum friends, super important.
Yeah, it is. But I think the important part is not to put the onus on the new mom to go open up about the postpartum depression. The onus is almost like on the moms who've already been there, done that, and on our medical professionals. And we need to make our moms feel safe to open up. The reason why women don't open up is because they don't feel safe, it's because they feel stigmatized. We need to create an environment where women feel safe. That's why when I was one of the first people in my group of friends who had kids, I very openly talked to all of my girlfriends about this. Even if sometimes I had shocked faces, I told my story, no matter how difficult it was to hear, not because I wanted to scare them, but because I wanted them to know, if something like this happens, please do not feel ashamed. Please reach out. I will be happy to support you and be there for you and not judge you, because there's nothing to be judged for. And I can even help you in terms of finding a professional to work with or something. But yeah, I feel like it's now on us. Yet another thing on our to-do list for moms who've been there, done that, is to share our story and make the new moms feel comfortable and be like, you can talk about this. It is safe. We will not judge you.
I didn't mean to give everyone so many jobs with this.
I know. I know, so many.
No, it's good though. It's I've definitely got some really good tips from you. Actually, I'm definitely gonna check out that book and things like that. Can we open it up to some questions? Does anyone have any questions? If you want to take yourself off mute or put anything in the chat now. And hi Sarah, again you dropped out. Otherwise, Maria, let people know how they can contact you if they want to talk a little bit more to you, or I know I've shared some of your details in the group, but maybe we'll share, everything, all of your information, how to contact you, how you can help our mums in Australia, because I know you work with women all over the world. So yeah, don't have to be in sunny Chicago.
Yeah, super sunny. Yeah, so I'm in Talia's group, so I'm sure if you tag me there, if you have a quick question, I should be able to hear that you tagged me. I also have a Facebook page. It's Parent on Board Coaching. I have a website, parentonboard.com. You can also find me on Instagram or on TikTok at Parent on Board Coaching. If you want to talk to me through the messenger on Facebook, I'm usually very responsive because my phone is with me and I have the app on there. So that's a great way to talk to me. You can email me at parentonboard@gmail.com. So there's ways to talk to me. I'm fairly easy to find. The way I work with moms is I do it all virtually. I do one-on-one coaching. I have currently 2 packages. I have one that's a month-long package, roughly. It's 4 sessions. It's kind of up to you how you split them up, but it's sort of meant as a month package. And I have a 3-month package, which it takes you more in depth into really rewriting your motherhood story and creating a motherhood that feels good to you, feels authentic, and feels like something that you actually want to be a part of. And so I do EFT tapping. If you've never heard of it, it's very simple. We use points mostly on our face and head and some finger points, the same as acupressure, except we're tapping on them while we are essentially reprogramming our nervous system and our brain. So we bring in a little bit of CBT in there, where we're reframing our negative thoughts into more positive thoughts. And it works a lot faster than traditional therapy because we're tapping on our body and on our nervous system directly. So the messages get bypass our sort of like thinking brain and go straight into our nervous system and into our amygdala and our reptilian brain, which is where a lot of our, feelings of anxiety and depression and our triggers come from. We don't think about them. That's just our body reacting. So yeah, that's what I do. I do that online. And again, let's say if you're in Australia and you look at my schedule and it doesn't look like you can get in with me, then that is where I would encourage you to write me a message through Messenger or to email me, because I can always open up some other times for people in a completely different time zone.
We've got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So they're sort of the same thing. How do we start making changes to our mindset and to our partner's parents' mindset? So that resistance that we're initially going to face, how do we take our first step? Amber, this is like the first step you need to take as well. I know you want a dot by dot point instruction.
Yeah, I mean, dot by dot, it is definitely long, and that is why I have my coaching programs, so that we can't. Rome wasn't built in one day. This is the same thing, but a lot of that mindset shift. That's why I use EFT, because it's easier to make that mindset shift when you're tapping on your body directly, when it is going into your nervous system and your body is actually accepting the messages that you say. But I would focus starting with yourself before you start with your partner, because our partners is not something we can control. We can't control their reactions. So we want to start our change within ourselves and focus it on ourselves. So maybe your initial step will be you take stock of everything that's happening in your life and maybe make a list of things I want to say yes to, right? Like, these are the things I want to say yes to. This is the amount of time. These are the things I don't really like. What can I take off my list to make more space for things that I want, right? And then once you have that, you can maybe share with your partner and say, hey, I was thinking about this, and this is how maybe I'd like the days to look differently. Again, the thing like the fair play system, bring that in to make the conversation easier, because a lot of the times the conversations kind of like go away and everybody gets emotional. But here you go, you have cards with instructions. Sit together, read them. Emotion can be taken out of there, because you're not pointing fingers and saying, oh, you're not doing this. You're sitting down together being like, this has been very stressful lately, or has been always stressful, and I came across this. What do you think about trying this out to make sure that we're both on the same page, that we decrease the arguments that we have about who's doing what? So you feel like you're contributing, and you feel like I appreciate that you're contributing, and then I feel like you're contributing, and we're not fighting with each other, right? But I do suggest that you focus on yourself first before you focus on your partner. And always remember, you can control how you feel. Rather, no, you can't control how you feel. You can control how you react. You definitely cannot control how your partner feels or reacts. So that is not part of you. So you work on your reactions and what you are going to do to make your life better, even within the situation that you already have. Like, I very much had this conversation with my husband about how I need more time to do this and that. And we rearranged our schedules to make sure that I have time to do that. We have talked about how he needs to take a little bit more time off work, so I have more time, and I'm not the only one responsible for when kids have days off. We negotiated that, took a while, but we're there. So there's slow steps, and yes, you might find that some partners are a lot more resistant to it than others, but you can get where you need to get. Focus on yourself first and focus on your mindset changes first.
Yeah, awesome. So let's all do a bit of a health check on our own health. I'm going to write some things down about, what's working for me, what's not working for me. And let's chat about it in the group. So the group is a completely safe space, no judgment, no nothing. If anyone wants to share anything or ask any questions, let's talk about it. Let's work this out together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be in the group checking if you guys have questions that I can answer. So I'd love to. I'm very active on Facebook. So a little embarrassed about it sometimes, but yes, I'm very active on Facebook.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to chat. I think everyone would have got a lot out of this. And if you've caught this on replay, just send us a little message and let us know what you thought. I'd love to know what you've taken away from this, what you're going to implement.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And I'm really glad that this could be of service. And, you know, again, if anybody has any questions, please reach out to me, or if for some reason can't get through to me directly, ask Talia and we'll connect, because, you know, this is my passion, maternal mental health and helping moms thrive in their motherhood. So I will be so happy to answer any of your questions, because, you know, any mom that is going to come out feeling better, like, to me, that's just a huge win.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you so much. We will chat soon. Thanks for tuning in live, everyone. Appreciate it. And yeah, just let me know if you have any other questions. See ya.
Bye.